Hello, folks, and welcome back to the channel for that Sunday show again on the Four Lads Had a Dream podcast network. Oh, sorry about being a wee bit late there. I was in an emergency board meeting there. It was dragging on, but we're live now. I should introduce my guest, shouldn't I? My usual, my good cop to my bad cop, Cheryl. Thank you for coming on again. How are you?
What did you get sorted? You can't even ask me. I need to know. Have you made the decision? Have you swung the axe? What's going on?
I can't tell you. I can if I could tell you, but I need to kill you.
Fair
That's
enough.
just the
No
way it
bother.
is.
No bother. Thank you. Lovely to be back with you. Missed you all last week.
And also, it's good seeing you again, Stevie. How are you, mate?
Mate, I clocked off for holidays yesterday. I thought I was done and dusted, didn't I? So, last minute emergency. Sorry, everyone. You're gonna have to put up with me. I'm afraid that's why we're late. I take the blame. So, there was no boardroom meeting, just like there was no 6 o'clock announcement.
Yes, we will get into that whole 6 o'clock announcement shenanigans. But let's discuss the game that maybe brought on the notion of an emergency meeting regarding the board and a certain Philippe Clement. Rangers played Dundee United at Ibrox. First game back from the international break, and it's rare that I say this, but I'd wish the international break lasted a bit longer, Cheryl. It was quite a bad day at the office, and it's getting worse when we have to keep saying there's lots of bad days at the office nowadays.
Yeah. Do you know what, Andy? I think we called it at the end of the pod before the last when we spoke about the international break. And did we think that we would come back any fresher? And the answer to that was no. No, because we've watched this movie several times before. We didn't come back from the last one refreshed. We didn't come back from the one before that refreshed. It's the definition of madness, isn't it? Nothing's changing. It's getting worse. I don't know about you guys, but what I noticed yesterday was almost like a distinct lack of anger. You know, there was people that were hacked off, there was a few voices, but what there was for me yesterday, and I think I was probably part of it as well, was just complete apathy. Complete apathy for a performance that we knew was going to take place, for a squad that we knew weren't going to achieve anything, for a manager that we knew couldn't really change anything, and for a performance that was against a team who had spent a large period of time on a bus without a proper warm-up, and who we looked like we were that team. We looked underprepared. There was nobody willing to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. There was just nothing. We looked completely clueless.
Yeah, Stevie, I'm interested in how you were feeling going into the game because I set off from Paisley. I had to push the car out of the driveway. I was dealing with my dad refusing to admit that he couldn't get out of the driveway himself. So I had to get out and push. So it felt like a lot of effort to go and watch what I had subtly felt was going to be more of the same. What was your kind of build up to the game, and how were you feeling during that build up?
I think like everybody, I kind of looked out the window and thought, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" Like when we've seen the snow everywhere, I think every single one of us thought that. Excuse the French, but I think you saw the lack of numbers there yesterday. And granted, there was a lot of people who wouldn't have been able to travel. And if, in case you were not noticing, the amount of people that left at half time was startling. So I think, you know, Cheryl used the word apathy, and I would tend to agree with her. It's not even like at full time yesterday. It's not the same ferocious kind of reaction you would expect. It's just a case of what do you expect? Because I'm sure we're going to go into the game and things like that. But anybody that watched the vlog yesterday, I think we'd done our first update in 20 minutes, and I called it as it was then. I said, we're not going to get anything out of this game because the start was boring, the football was terrible, and that's the way it's been now. Not only yesterday, but for a sustained period of time. And by sustained, I'm talking about 6 months of football. In terms of actual playing time, it's been 6 months, and you've had a few outliers in there and a few good performances, but the good performances you could count on one hand. So I think, I would agree with Cheryl. There's apathy and there's a despondency now, I think, within the crowd at Ibrox, when they turn up, I think, accepting the days of calling, 4 or 5 wins and stuff like that are gone. This is our level now at this moment under this current management, and it's difficult to see a way out of it short term.
Yeah, we'll get into the first half then. We've kind of given our overall feeling of it. We'll break it down a wee bit further. As Stevie said, it was quite a traditional, or in the modern sense, in the last few years, it's becoming a bit of a tradition to start slowly. I'd kind of, for a glimpse, hoped, based on Tierney's press conference saying he wants to we really do want to start playing some nice football, and I went, well, I would like to see it. I'm not going to lie to you. Some nice football makes those days when it is colder and it's rainy a bit easier. But we weren't treated to that, Cheryl. We were treated to the usual slow start, which, as you said, I felt was particularly damning given the fact the opposition had just came off their warm up as the kind of teams were ready to come out of the tunnel. I know there was a lot of talk about the 4:45 start. I did notice as Dundee United players only came off, I want to say it like 4:20, and there was a wee bit of a delay to the actual start time. But there's no excuse there. But as you said, a long bus journey. And we don't really have that excuse. We should have been up for it and taken the game to the early doors, but it just wasn't like that, Cheryl.
Yeah, absolutely. They looked more up for it than we did, and they weren't any great shakes. But I don't know, they looked better prepared. We just didn't. I know we had the change. I was quite happy that we had Sterling in at right back. I was a wee bit unsure of Proper coming in. But it was the team that overall I expected. But there was just nothing. There was no leadership. There was nobody until the second half that was willing to do something, that was willing to take the game by the scruff of the neck. We just looked absolutely rudderless, clueless. We almost looked like a team who hadn't played with each other before, and it buys into his new team, the line that he keeps trotting out. But we genuinely looked yesterday at the beginning of that first half as if we'd never met each other before. A lack of killer instinct, just a lack of anything, a lack of heart, a lack of desire. And obviously that then feeds back into the stand because it is now what we expect. It's what we've come to expect. And nobody was surprised. I certainly wasn't. I don't think anyone was surprised by what we've seen for large parts of the game yesterday.
Yeah, Stevie, there's only so many times I can keep seeing City getting beat and going, that happens to the best of us, don't worry about it, before it really starts to become a concerning factor. Our performances, game after game, aren't getting better, and the start is one of these key things that we're not seeing any improvement in. As the first half, starts to wear on, it's hard to describe the goal that Dundee United scored without my head falling into my hands as it did, as it happened live. It was shock, which quickly faded into, this has happened before, this is nothing new. A defensive mishap. What was your thoughts? Similar to the we've been here before kind of feeling I was experiencing?
Yeah, I think, do you know, when we talk about go over this game, we could just recycle any of the number of shows that we've done in the last 6 months because it's the exact same and it's all rinse and repeat. Frontline's chronic, let's not mince words. Cyril Desser's miles off it yesterday, and I think that he has more or less given up with this passage of play and how we're trying to play. Bayrami looks in 3 months like we've sucked the absolute life out of his enthusiasm as well, and I just think that Tierney's actually, he was the one that looked lively and he was at least trying, but I think Diamande is hiding in plain sight. I think that the midfield two are battling, but are arguably nothing anywhere to give them. And the back line is a mistake away. I mean, I like Jeffy, right? I like him. And the reason I like him is because he's got a bit of pace and he's got a bit of energy, and nobody else in that team has got that. That's why we all gravitate towards him. I think that's quite obvious. But he's at fault for the goal, the first one. But the goal is so easy. Gallagher at the back takes about 3 touches, switches play to a boy who's completely unmarked. There's nobody near him. He dribbles in 20 yards, has about a month and a half to look up and pick his cross. And by the time the boy crosses it, he's found space between Proper and Yefty. Butland's on his arse. He's not coming. He's not that even. I don't know what he's doing. The catalogue of errors in that goal is just rinse and repeat. It really is. And we don't respond. We can't respond. And by the way, we're a John Souttar block away from it being 2-0 at half time. And at that point, you're never coming back from that. You know, we can't score 2 in the majority of our games, Andrew. But you know, this is where it frustrates me when it comes to Clermont, because I asked him in post match. I said, you need to look at the players you're playing and the teams you're starting. I think he does, because we look at this countless times, you know, and he says, oh, it's different, and that is not. The front line is the same front line that can't hold up the ball, doesn't involve itself, doesn't run, doesn't move, doesn't win duels. I think Dessers had 7 duels yesterday and he won 0 of them. And it's not even like he's ferociously going in and he's getting beaten. He's just half-heartedly putting himself about, and he looks defeated. Like, genuinely, he looks, and I look at him and I look at Bayrami, and look, by the way, I don't think that Dessers is as bad as how he's playing. I think you look at our team, and I think a lot of them look like they're just fed up. You know, you listen to Jack Butland in the press conference afterwards, and that you can feel the frustration. So a lot of it is down to the manager, a lot of it's down to the players, but there's no surprising yesterday. Dundee United weren't unlucky to get a point. They were very well deserving of a point. They defended well. They came and done what, you know, any basic team could do. And we just lack so much. We don't have pace, we don't have power. That's why we don't score from set pieces, Andrew, because we don't have anybody in there willing to put themselves on the line and stuff like that. You know, he chucked John Souttar up front for the last 10 minutes. John Souttar's not scored in God knows how long. He doesn't win headers. He doesn't bully people. Why put him up front? You've got a young striker playing left wing. None of it makes any sense. So I think there's a lot of it, you know, just isn't good enough. And at half time, you know, 2 went off. You could have subbed off 7 or 8. And by the way, I'm not. I've seen a comment there. Does anyone feel like Stevie makes excuses for Dessers? I absolutely don't. Anybody that knows me knows that I do not rate him. But I'm not going to come on and make it all about him, because there's more to it, Andrew. This isn't just a one-person problem. This is problems throughout the team, the setup, everything. So that's a frustrating thing for me about, to kind of ramble on a wee bit about. I spoke to the manager, asked him. We've seen that same performance more or less against Motherwell in the cup final at halftime. He brings on Danilo and we get an uplift straight away up front. Yesterday, the exact same thing. It doesn't take rocket science to figure that this forward line and the team setup needs fixed. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going the way we are.
You know, I was happy to let Stevie go on there, because it's exactly how I feel. And, you know, from listening to me, if you listen in on the shows regularly, is that I do my best to be positive, but everything that Stevie just said is exactly how I feel. It's just, I don't know if I would have been able to say it as much vocally as Stevie did. So thank you, Stevie. That was exactly how I was feeling, and I felt it had to be said, but you said it for me. Gerald, one of the things I noticed when the ball goes in the net from the Dundee goal, they said the VAR checking possible offside. Our players didn't have a Scooby about any possible offside. They looked shell shocked, was the way I described it at the time. I felt it was if there was a miracle they would call it offside, then they would have got themselves out of jail. But that wasn't coming, and they just looked dejected. They felt it looked like they were, falling victim to the same phase of play, one lapse of judgment, and they've taken the lead. I think we did outshoot them in the first half, something like 10-4, but that total shots is not the important stat, neither is possession. It's all about that, not the goal stat, and if it's 1-0 to Dundee United at half time, you're going to get the reaction you get at half time. It was worrying just from, there's usually a Raskin or a Barron. If the ball goes in the net, it's come on, let's lift it. Come on, let's brush ourselves down. We get back to it. it was none of that. It was total dejection. That was worrying me, Cheryl.
Absolutely. Do you know it was like next in the series of nobody stops the cross, gets what's going to happen yet? It's a goal that we've lost several times. It was just so frustrating. But again, I think it comes back to that leadership as well. I know that we've got Butland, who's a big talker. I'm not a great fan, I've said before, of having a goalkeeper as a captain. I know he is very vocal, but I think we need somebody more in the middle of the pitch. But that's not just down to your captain. That's down to your other leaders or apparent leaders within the team, like your Suitors or your Raskin. And to be fair, Raskin, I do think as well, sometimes will do that bit of shouting, will do that running about and talking to everybody. But there was just very little response to that. And as Stevie said, we were actually then very lucky not to go too behind. But what is happening on the pitch feeds back to us, because you could feel in the crowd as well, there wasn't that, right, come on, we've got this, we can, come on, we'll get a goal back very quickly, we'll go on. Nobody thought that. Well, I certainly didn't think it. I didn't think we had 2 goals in us yesterday. I was delighted that we got the one, but I certainly didn't think we would then go on and win. And another thing, just to maybe go slightly back, was that there was no fear. And there is no fear. We've seen from Hearts, we've seen from Dundee United, teams don't fear coming to Ibrox anymore. They know that there's a very good chance that they'll manage to sneak a goal. They'll probably end up going 1-0 up. The crowd will then get a wee bit unhappy, a wee bit unsettled, and there won't be much of a response. It's an absolute riot from the top to the bottom. It really is. A lack of leadership, a lack of drive, a lack of fear. Do you know what? And it sounds like probably quite a petty thing, but a lot of times you'll see if there's a long VAR check, you'll see the other team take the ball away back down to the goalie as if they know that goal's going to be ruled off for VAR. We just kind of stood there waiting, expecting it to go back to the middle for the kick-off again, because do you know what? There's none of that mind games. Dundee United could have won a world title for time wasting yesterday, but I get that's probably part of the fact that they weren't, they hadn't warmed up. But I do think there was a wee bit of the dark arts to that as well. That's things that other teams do. That's wee tricks that other teams play. We don't have any of that. We don't have any of that at all. We're very, very passive. There's no, I don't know, there's no drive. I don't know. I can't even sum up how bad it was.
Yeah, it's going beyond words, I feel. Stevie, I wasn't expecting a post-match press conference or come on, speaks to Rangers TV regarding today's match. I was kind of stupidly hoping there would maybe be some movement. There wasn't, and lo and behold, Philippe does speak to Rangers TV and to the other media outlets as well. He said along the lines of, at half-time he made changes on players that he thought were not brave enough, people that didn't almost want to be on the park, I think was the way I've kind of seen it. And that was maybe the only good thing about listening to him, is I feel like he was probably right there, which is the 2 players I thought weren't willing to put themselves on the line to try and, in Desser's case, try and beat your man to get to the front post for crosses. I think it was hiding at the back post. Diamandi didn't want to show for the ball, in my opinion. I don't know what it's down to. I don't know if it's down to poor coaching. I don't know if it's down to, just not understanding what the manager is asking of them. But there were 2 outstanding candidates to come off at half-time, and they did come off at half-time. That's probably the only positive thing I can think of in that game, is that at least you kind of seen what I seen, and that's that those players, and I don't want to say that everybody else in the park was spot on, because they weren't, but for me, I didn't feel they were doing, the prerequisites to be on the park, and that's, that's all I could see that was positive from the managers, that he made those changes, and I suppose then what the changes would then lead to.
But how many times does he have to make those changes before the penny drops? It shouldn't be a surprise. You know what I mean? We don't win free kicks outside the box. We don't hold the ball up. We don't, there's a reason why Tab's numbers have dropped in free kicks and everything else. Numbers have dropped around the box. We don't win free kicks around there. The manager said yesterday, I quote, he said, "We'd have went in 0-0, it would have been perfect," in his response to me. so massively miles away from being true. It's unbelievable. He said we were better in the second half. I'd done a pod update on the vlog at around about 60 minutes, and it was still as garbage as it was. And he can tell us the second half was better than what we want to see, but it wasn't. For 20 minutes, we got a wee bit more out of them when they scored a goal because Czerny lifted it. But it's all little bits and pieces. There's not 90 minutes of good play. There's not 45 minutes of good play. It's slightly better than before. And if you can't be better than the first half, you shouldn't bother turning up because that was garbage. So let's call it as it is. The manager has to defend himself, and I get it, but it's the first time I've spoke to the manager and I didn't feel like there was any passion coming back from him at all. I basically sat in front of him and said, the fans don't want you here. How do you respond to that? They're losing faith in you and they're losing faith in what you're trying to do. And he kind of just said, I agree with him on the first half. It's difficult. I don't like sitting there, Andrew. You know what? It's really difficult because I like Clement. You feel for him on a human kind of level, but honestly, I'm not sure that he's making it any easier for himself either because it's the same mistakes. We cannot be surprised when we don't create chances when we play Dessers as a lone front man. We cannot be surprised when we don't break against teams quickly when there's no pace in that team. That's why Jeffrey was an outlier yesterday because he's got pace and he's trying to get forward on the left-hand side. None of it really makes sense for me, like in terms of it's almost like he's waiting for it to click and then he's surprised when it doesn't. But none of else, as Cheryl says, it's not like we're surprised, the ones that are watching, because we're all going, this isn't going to work. So, yeah, the second half was a bit better, but Christ, if it couldn't have been better than that first half, we'd be as well just chucking it. And it was better, from maybe around 60 onwards. And we had spells of that time, but Dundee United missed chances to go 2-0 up. And we need to be honest in saying that, especially at the end of the first half. So I don't buy it from Clement in terms of, Hadji and Danilo and stuff like that. He's had the chances to make these changes and he's not done it. We can't act surprised when suddenly we're in the same position as we find ourselves in. The honest truth, Andrew, is, and we can go over the game, we can go over everything, the football is turgid. It has been for months and months. And unless he fixes it, we're in for a hell of a lot more pain. We all said on the pod last week that this little run of games coming up, we had 4 league games. So we had United, I think St Johnstone away, Kilmarnock, and then we had Ross County away. All tricky games because of the way we were playing, but they have to be winning games. And at the moment, we don't look capable of winning these games at all. And then that's before you even get to Nice away, before you even get to Spurs away and Celtic in the cup final, of all of which could be frightening. So there needs to be a little reality check in terms of what we're trying to do on that part because it's not working. And he can either take on board what helped fix it yesterday in terms of slight personnel changes. By fix it, I mean made it slightly better. Or he can continue to start the same players that are continuously doing a first half like yesterday, Andrew. And that's where I am on it. I know I don't see the point in going into ins and outs and everything because that game we've seen 100 times. It was just the cup semi-final repeated, basically. We got better when Danilo come on because he can move and he links up play. He still misses chances. We're not entirely sure that he's the answer, but at least he's better than playing before. Dessers isn't a target man. He needs somebody playing with him. Igamani comes on. We think, great, maybe they're going to 2. He puts him left wing and puts Suter up front. None of it makes sense. He cannot be surprised and expect us not to be upset and booing, etc., because it doesn't work.
I hate to continue to bury the hatchet and continue to be negative. As I've said, it's not my style, but I'd say the only bright sparks were Czerny, as you said, because as Stevie said there, you get the goal, continuing his individual good form. And I'd say Hadji and Danny just because it was something different. But again, it doesn't feel like a positive when they could have, you left it so long that you've lost all good credit for bringing them on because it was rather obvious. Granted, I think both of them did bring something different. But Gerald, let's take it right back down to earth. Danny and Hadji are both not in the European squad, so any positive from that game will not even be there on Thursday against in the next round of our next game on the Europa League, which will be difficult. So it's back to the drawing board again, but it'll just be copy and paste of games before Danny was fit and before Hadji was back in the team. So it's awful.
I wouldn't put it past us, Andy, to actually go and get a decent result in Nice. That wouldn't shock me in the slightest, because we've seen it time and again this season, very, very poor domestically, showing absolutely nothing, and then decent, in fact, if not very good, European performances. But in terms of, just to pick up on a point that Stevie made as well, we did look better about that 60-minute mark yesterday, but that probably had a lot to do with Dundee United being absolutely knackered as well, because they were really, really poor in the second half. So we did look slightly better, absolutely. His subs made a slight difference, but it probably does tie in with the fact that Dundee United in that second half offered very, very little. And even then, we couldn't capitalise on that. But no, to go back to my original point, I'm not that I'm not worried about Nice, but I think we'll probably turn in a far better performance than we've seen on Saturday afternoon.
I like to hear that. I like to hear the hope. Hope is a good thing to have.
That's the messages that I'm getting from beyond at the moment that are coming through in the background. I'm just actually going to go and put this light off, because I don't know what somebody's trying to tell me something. Probably get off and stop talking rubbish. So excuse me a wee second, and I'll just put the light off.
Stevie, right, we've got to 27 minutes tonight, and we haven't mentioned, well, we have, but jokingly, we haven't gone into the detail on the WhatsApp rumour. I was finding it hard not to laugh as I seen it coming through. I just at first I was positive, and then I went, actually Rangers wouldn't make me feel positive, so it obviously cannot be true. I think that's somebody's just obviously had a really good day today and thought we'll get them with this cracker forwarded WhatsApp messages, but just a load of rubbish.
Yeah, described as absolute nonsense. Look, there's two ways to look at it. I think we all know that the writing's on the wall for this, unless there is some sort of drastic turnaround. And look, I absolutely hope there is, because it means we'll get results and we'll start going the direction we need to. I have not seen a manager turn it round at this level of dejection at Rangers, I would argue. I think once it gets here, it can only get worse. I once seen Alex McLeish do it. Alex McLeish went up to Aberdeen in a League Cup game, and we ended up winning that night 2-0. Fernando Rickson and Stevie Thompson scored. Bob Malcolm got sent off. I was at it. And this was, everybody was saying this is it for Eck if he doesn't get through this League Cup game. And then we went on a tremendous run. It wasn't great at times, but we got wins. And Purcell and Novo clicked, etc. And off we went. And we ended up a very successful season. I'm not sure that this team can respond. As Cheryl says, I wouldn't be surprised if they do well in Nice, because they're set up to do that. And I think that suits us slightly. But domestically, I worry about St Johnstone, Kilmarnock, Ross County. And that's before we even get to those two games in that week. The WhatsApp, I knew it was rubbish as soon as I read it, to be honest. But WhatsApps always go around like this. So, yeah, quick check, described as absolute nonsense. Let Johnny McFarlane go and rubbish it online, because he gets pelters for it anyway. But, yeah, I don't know if sacking him solves everything. I really don't. But we spoke about, and I seen a comment about, we all knew that this was going to be a transitional season, and yeah, we did. I absolutely accept that. But we also, there is a standard at least that we need to get to, and I can understand it if we're not winning games, and at least we can see something. And people go on about Gerrard taking 3 years, but we could see it under Gerrard almost instantly. We were going in the right direction. We were winning games. There was European progress. Very quickly, we got in their faces. He beat them in the second game. at Ibrox in a 1-0 victory, and he very quickly managed to show us an improvement. Every single one of us would have went with Philip Clement if we could at least see some good football, some passages of play, some nice things. We don't, and that's why everybody's kind of at the end of their tether. Whether it changes, Andrew, everything, I'm not overly convinced because I think this squad's miles away. But, how long do you let it go? If he doesn't win these league games, the pressure's going to be excruciating. But would you sack him and put somebody in charge when they're on a hiding to nothing against Spurs and Celtic? And then Celtic at home in a couple of weeks? Or would you ride it out and see how it goes? And then when Celtic do come and go on the 2nd, or I think 2nd of January, isn't it? And then make the change. Because if you bring in somebody now, they're already under pressure. They're already on a hiding to nothing because we've got games coming up that under the squad at the moment. And the way they're playing, it doesn't fix it. It doesn't make it instantly better. So I can understand why maybe, I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying we agree with it, I'm understanding why they might hang fire at this moment in time. But the WhatsApp rumours weren't true today, Andrew, but I think it's only a matter of time before they become true, unless there's a hell of a turnaround, which I'm not sure I see.
We mentioned it before coming on there tonight about the whole process and the WhatsApp and are we looking at other options? I feel like, and I said to you, duty of care from the people in charge. Then, as I said that, I then clocked, for this time we didn't really have people in charge for it, so we're hardly in a great position to do so. But, there's a part of me that thought it was useful in a way, almost, I know there was 3 names, funnily enough, I don't think any of them would, I think, was it McInnes, there was Potter in there, and I can't remember what the third one was, but I felt it was unattainable and then unrealistic.
Gerrard, the third one was.
See, I tried to block that one out. But on the basis that now Beale's his assistant, he wouldn't be coming back anyway. I thought that was unrealistic. I felt if it was a wee bit tad more realistic, it would maybe have been useful in the bigger picture for whoever is going to come in and be in charge of the process if we're going to be looking at replacing the manager, which, spoiler alert, I think we maybe should be. But Stevie's answered, has kind of answered what I would be saying in regards to a new manager at this time in the year is you've got some big games which could end up being big losses, which could end up being major scar tissue with this group of players. It's not like we haven't seen this before. This team maybe gets a good bounce, the new manager bounce, we then take a tough defeat and it wears on the team, we then regress back and then we're back at square one again. We're in that position where if you were going to replace the manager and give him a chance to get, his style of play and get some confidence and maybe start, a long-term plan with this new manager, you would have had to do it weeks, months ago. At this point in time, I think if you were to replace the manager, you're doing a massive disservice with the games he's going to have to immediately handle. Which then goes back to interim manager. If you're going to replace the manager, then that's all you can really do. It's that position is it's the poison chalice. I don't think any manager in their right mind would be clambering to take the job. With the whole short term in terms of the games to be played and the long term with everything that's going on outside of the football in the club at the minute, it's not going to be a quick fix changing the manager.
No, absolutely not. And I think yeah, if we had to do something at the moment, then it would have probably be advisable to be that interim role. Wouldn't it? Get in somebody that knows the club. We've got these games coming up. We know that as things stand, we're probably, that the results are, it's watch behind your finger stuff. So we're going to be no further back, maybe putting an interim manager in place till the end of the season and then doing that process properly, taking that time, looking for somebody, sorting out the key positions within the club as well, so we can get our financial stuff sorted out as well. The only thing I think about not replacing him, Andy, and keeping him where he is at the moment, which I understand there's a point in, is that people will show with their feet. people will stop showing up. We've seen it before. We'll see it again. That apathy will turn back to anger. And I remember kind of earlier on, I think it was maybe after the Celtic game, making the point of this team are well known for getting that new manager bounce, maybe for a couple of games, getting a wee bit of a lift out of somebody new coming in, and then they revert back to type. And I actually remember in the comments somebody saying, "Oh, no, but that these are all new players." That's still a culture within this club. I'm sorry, it hasn't changed with the new players that have come in. There is still that culture of an absolute lack of leadership within the team. So it would not surprise me in the slightest that if we do say, I don't know, we get a new manager next week, we will see that bounce. But without that kind of lack of leadership, it wouldn't surprise me if we got that bounce and then, as you say, reverted back to type as well.
Let's subtly look ahead. And obviously the flagship show is tomorrow, folks, so make sure to tune into that one as they'll go into, yesterday's game and of course the game ahead. We'll look to that game ahead just briefly. As I said, the potential, bright spots, if you want to call them that, your Hadjis, your Dannies and the team yesterday aren't in the European squad, so you're not going to get any joy from seeing them. And also, Big Cass is now injured as well, who we maybe would have favoured in these European games. Obviously, Dujon started to have had no minutes. Stevie, it's hard to keep, going on and not seeing much change. I felt there was subtle change. Obviously, Tav didn't play. I felt that Dio wasn't sitting in the kind of 10 spot at times. It felt like the changes that he made were subtle and didn't work. But I'm looking at obviously the European squad list, and players like Tom Lawrence in there who's now injured. Yeah, it's obviously having Cortez in there, but he's also injured. Obviously having Cass, but he's now injured. The only bright spot I think is Ridvan is in the squad, so potentially you could use Jeff to further up the park. I'm just trying to look at what bright spots we could see on Thursday, and it's hard. It's getting harder to pick somebody to look forward to seeing. As I said to you in the WhatsApp yesterday, if Barron and Raskin or Raskin get subbed off, I feel like I might want to go home because they're the only enjoyable thing from watching the team in the last few games. But especially given the opposition, I know we are maybe more set up for European football. I think it's going to be a hard match, and the personnel wise, it'll be difficult maybe to find a solution. But what's your thoughts on where we stand squad wise?
Yeah, it's thin, yeah. Hadji, I thought done well when he came on yesterday. At least added a kind of busyness, tried passes, tried to get involved, tried a few shots. It didn't come off one, which created a kind of wee scramble, which we were unlucky in. So yeah, I would have been inclined to go with Danilo and Hadji. I would hope that the following weekend, I think St Johnstone next, isn't it? That they are both in. I would love to see Bayrami play as a 10. It is, I think, imperative that we try and change that and add something to it. I think that Hadji and Danilo have done enough to at least get a start in the league game. As for Nice, I'm not sure you can start Igaman. Do you just rule out Dessers altogether to come out because he's not offering you anything? Does Diamandi start in the 10 as well, because he's been fairly I don't know what the right word is for it, fairly, absent, I suppose. Like, he didn't play well yesterday at all. He didn't influence the game. Hiding in plain sight was a phrase getting used quite a lot yesterday. Do you then shift Jeffy? Could you start Ridvan, shift Jeffy? Could you move Bayrami in? Would that help? I don't know. You're looking at Cherny being the bright spark. Does Tav come back in at right back just because Sterling played yesterday? I don't think many of us would say yes, but I'm trying to think what the manager would do. There's not much else, Andrew. There's not much else at all. Balogun, does Balogun come back in? What's the Nice attack like? I don't know much about them. Are they quick? If they're quick, then maybe Balogun does have to come in and start. Look, it's difficult. There's not a lot of bright points in there at all, Andrew. it's not like, aside of Tierney, I think it's not like there's a lot there to kind of grasp onto. And fair play to Tierney. I thought that he tried to at least grab the game yesterday. He was playing some nice passes. Danilo kind of holding it up a wee bit. Danilo probably, could have done better with his chances yesterday, but there was definitely more to us once we started to get going after the 60-odd minutes. So, listen, the league game's probably easier to make changes for. The European squad's quite thin and there's not a lot we can do there. So a few players who have played themselves out of the team, that's the best way of describing it, will probably start again simply because there's nobody else.
Quickly, just before I come to you, Cheryl, on the next point, just a heads up. Thank you very much, Alex, for donating to the show tonight. And I think that question is it's now more of a worry because we still have games to play before that League Cup final. I think that's the worrying fact, is these games are equally as important for the manager's time at the club to extend. That's the way I see it. Every game is now a cup final, and we said this in the show previously, Stevie, where we looked ahead to Spurs and Celtic, but in a lot of the games before then, anything other than a win is disastrous. And funnily enough, the next game we then played was not a win. I don't want to say what a tempting fate, but I think I'll just shut up about predicting games because it seems to not help the team as we go into them. But thank you, Alex, for that donation and your question. It's becoming harder to keep giving him chances, but it's up to him to make it work. Cheryl,
Can I just say something just on Alex there? Like, I really appreciate anyone donating. I didn't know you could do that. So thank you very much to Alex. This is a free podcast site for everyone to enjoy. It's mates talking about, trying to get through it kind of thing. I think it becomes therapy at such. But I appreciate the question. If I can quickly answer it, can he survive not winning the League Cup final against them? I'm not even thinking about that. We've got 4 games before we even get to that point, which I think are massive. And if he doesn't start winning, the pressure on him by the time he gets to that will be unbearable. Cheryl, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Stevie. I do think that people will walk. I do think that if we don't get the results, that you will see a big backlash, because I think it's the only thing that will make a difference to the people who are in charge. If people vote with their feet and stop coming and stop buying the merchandise and stop using the halftime bars or the food and all that, you'll hit them in the pocket, and that's probably what will lead to change. As things stand, no, I don't think we there's rumours about people going into positions. I know that you guys will talk about it tomorrow on the main show. But at the moment, we still don't know who will be able to make these decisions. And if anyone who will come in, will it be somebody in the interim? Do they have someone in mind? As we discussed, Andy, prior to the start of the show, are they doing their due diligence? Are they looking at anyone? I'm seeing in the comments that achieves nothing, but it will achieve something if fans stop turning up. It will. We've seen it in the past. Fans will vote with their feet, and I do think that will be the only thing. I could be wrong, Nicole. I could be wrong, but I do think that that's one of the things that will make the board sit up and take notice.
Can I just say as well, see on the current names that are out there, Patrick Stewart for CEO, the Lord for chairman, my understanding is they are correct. And you're looking at them coming in before the AGM. Now, Patrick Stewart, not to go into this too much, because I know the guys are going to cover it tomorrow, but he comes with a fairly decent reputation. Was CEO, I think, temporarily for 5 months at Manchester United. Great connections at UEFA and stuff like that. So it's a intriguing appointment, I would say. I don't know much about prospective new chairman, but the CEO looks to be the kind of level that I would have hoped they would have been at least looking at, Andrew. So I think there was a question a wee while ago when we can expect them to be in place. I would be amazingly surprised if the board didn't try and implement those appointments, at least officially, before the AGM in a few weeks' time to try and at least answer some of the questions that are going to come their way beforehand.
Yeah, well, there you go, folks. End it on a slight high there, I suppose. Some subtly adding, parts of the ship back together. I suppose it makes my job easier trying to think of funny quips to use when you've now got Patrick Stewart as the CEO and all the avenues you could go down with jokes about that. But that will be for another time when we are over the line with it and the club have announced it and we have navigated the waters ahead of us. But I think that'll wrap us up for the evening. Thank you very much for listening tonight and anyone listening back. It's been a therapeutic evening, I would suggest, in some ways, but when your football podcast turns into a therapy session, it starts to say a lot about the club that you're doing said podcast on. Last but not least, I would like to thank the two people that have helped me through this evening. Cheryl, my regular partner on the show. We're getting through it. It's episode 12 in the season. We're getting there. Thanks for coming on again tonight.
Not a problem. I'm going to just leave you with a very short and small uplifting antidote. I know there's been a lot of chat this weekend about how, people who grew up in my generation grew up with McCoist and Loudrup and Gascoigne and how unfair it is on the generation of young fans that are coming up now and having to watch this. And I go with my little boy who's 8. And I said to him yesterday, do you know what? I'm really sorry. I actually apologised to him that you're having to watch this. There's been a lot of chat. People don't have heroes. And he was like, Mum, I've got Ross McCausland. So don't worry, all is not lost. There are still heroes for the younger generation in the current squad.
No, I fully agree with you. I'm 22, so Ross McCausland is a lot better than the Francisco Sandazas and Edmerson Krabaris I had to deal with through the third division around that age. So yes, by all means, keep on supporting the lads. I think it's the only thing we can do. Lastly, by certainly no means the least, the gaffer himself, Stevie, thank you for coming on again tonight. It's been a pleasure.
Aye, probably not for the people listening to me going on and on, I'm sure. I appreciate all the comments, everybody watching. 6,000 people watching is quite ridiculous. But we're thankful. I really appreciate Alex's donation. But as I said before, this is a free site. It's not something that we asked for, but I appreciate that. I'll split it between the podders and they'll get 50 pence each. So, no, we're very thankful. Listen, just try and call it honestly, Andrew. I think that's the most important thing. I know Cheryl does when we come on here, and a lot of our things that we say might not be right for some people, they might be right for others, but it's opinions. It's just like when you would go down, to the pub or meet somebody at a cafe or whatever, and you chat Rangers with them, it's still the same. And I had a kind of conversation with a boy last night on X talking about, he thought that my point of view of being in Clermont at this point was the wrong thing to do, and I don't mind that at all. It is it's people's opinions, isn't it? So it would be nice though if at some point this all clicked, or things got us there that made it click. That's for sure. But on that note, I'll worry about that in 2 weeks' time. I'm off to Florida tomorrow, so yeah. I've got that gif in mind, where the guy returns with the pizza box and the whole place is on fire and all that kind of thing. Yeah, it might be like that. Especially Cheryl's covering the Kilmarnock home game in a couple of weeks and she'll be in the presser and stuff. And by the time I get back, it might be a wee bit like that, Cheryl. So, yeah.
It's in safe hands, don't you worry.
We'll see.
I think Stevie's just getting himself right in there with the club with their Kissimmee sponsors, the big bold heart of Florida, as I keep hearing every halftime break. But yeah, enjoy your break. It's well earned. Lastly, before we close the show again, thank you to our sponsors for the season: Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions, CSD Air Conditioning, Black Rooster, and Art of Gold. Thank you. That'll do it for tonight. Thankfully, it's another game down. A couple of days to kind of detox before Thursday night, where we may actually see football if it works for us. Hard to stay positive, but yeah, thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you very much. Good night.
Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clyde Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited, and CSD Air Conditioning, along with Art of Gold. Thank you for listening or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.